Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chaf Aleph, Daf 21 of Masechta Hagiga. Friends, wait, what's this? Excuse me. Alright, so we're studying Daf 21 of Masechta Hagiga. Daf 21, really, we're going to see a machlokas between Reb Ila and Rave about how to understand the first clause in our Mishnah from yesterday, that Kodesh is more stringent than Truma, in that by Truma you're allowed to tovel a kli inside of another kli, which is not so by Kodesh. So, friends, let us jump in over here and explore this machlokas. So says the Gemara, "Ba Kodesh my time alo." So how come when it comes to Kodesh, the Mishnah says that you're not allowed to toivel a one vessel inside of another vessel? So it says Reb Ila, well, because if you have one vessel, then you put another vessel in that vessel, the vessel that's in the vessel is going to weigh down and be resting upon the outer vessel, and it's going to make a chatzitza, right? The water isn't going to be able to completely surround the outer vessel because you have the inner vessel resting upon it. But one second. If we take a look, as we're going to in a second, at the last clause in the Mishnah, is it the last one? No, it's a later one. Yes, it's a later clause. Right? So since there is a later clause that seems to be concerned about chatzitza, so then wouldn't that imply that this earlier clause is not chatzitza? I.e., right? They can't both. Why would it say the same thing twice? Dikatoni seifa, that the seifa says v'lo k'midas hakodesh midas hatrume, that kodesh is not like truma. Shebekodesh matir umangiv umatbil. That by Kodesh, you first have to untie any knots, and then dry it, and then you toivel it, and then afterwards you could tie it up. Whereas by Trume, first you could tie it up first, and then toivel it. So that seems to be, right? How come you can't have it tied up? Well, because if it's tied up, then the water can't get in. So it's going to be a chatzitza, it's going to be a separation. So the question is, against Rav Ila, is how can both the Reisha and the Seifa be talking about the same thing? Chatzitza. So, and for the Gemara, Reisha v'Seifa mishum chatzitza, indeed, both the Reisha and the Seifa is about making a separation, a chatzitza, utzricha. And we need them both. We need the case of the vessel inside the vessel, and we need the case of the knots. The Ashminan Reisha, because if we would only have the first part, the vessel inside the vessel, Hava Amina, I would have thought, Hainu Taima to Lakodesh Lo. This is why you can't have a vessel inside of a vessel. Mishum Kvedo Shel Kli, De'ika. Well, because you have one vessel inside of another vessel, and the inner vessel is going to weigh down upon the outer vessel and cause a chatzitza. Aval seifa deleka kvedo shel kleima lekodesh nami lavi chatzitza. But in the second case of the knots, where you don't have anything weighing down upon the other thing, so I might think that it's taka not a chatzitza, and it's no problem even for kodesh v'ashmin and seifa. And if all I would have is the second clause in the Mishnah, which is the knots. So avamina hainu taima de kodesh lo. This is why you cannot use knots, right? You can't have a knot when toiveling kodesh. Mishum de kitru b'maya adu kemihadek. Because when you put the knot in the water, it becomes very stark, becomes very strong. Avaresha de maya akpuye makpu le limono lo av chatzitza. But I might think that in the Reisha, in the first clause, the vessel inside the other vessel, that the water will make the inner vessel float, so it won't actually create a separation. It won't be weighing down upon the outer vessel. Tzricha, that's why we need both cases to teach that in each case, both the vessel inside the vessel and the knot, we have to be concerned about chatzitza. And even though, yes, they both are chatzitzas, but they are both necessary examples. Rabbi Ila l'taime, and Rabbi Ila is consistent with his reasoning. Dam Rabbi Ila, that Rabbi Ila says, Rabbi Chanina bar Pape, in the name of Rabbi Chanina bar Pape, Eser Milos Shanu Kan, that we mentioned 10 clauses in the Mishnah. Now, if we look at the Mishnah, there's actually 11 clauses. However, we're only considering them to be 10. Right? So we see that Rabbi Ilas is saying in the name of Rabbi Pape that there's actually, even though there are listed 11 clauses in the Mishnah, they really are only 10, right? Because 2 of them are the same thing, are chatzitza. Chomesh Rishon is bein l'kodesh, bein l'chulin shenaisu, al tairis hakodesh. The first 5 apply both to actual kodesh as well as, non-kodesh things like pizza that you're treating as though that you're with the same stringency as kodesh. Achronis the kodesh of Allah l'chulin shenaisu al tairis hakodesh, whereas the last 5, the later 5, only apply to actual kodesh, actual kodshim, but not to pizza that you are treating as if it was kodshim. My time chomesh kamaisa de islu durora de tuma midoiraisa gazubu rabbanon. Well, if we look at the first 5, there are concerns that actually are concerns of actual deoraisa tuma. So therefore we apply it bein l'kodesh, bein l'chulin shenaisu al tairis hakodesh. Therefore we apply it to shlamim as well as pizza. Of course, if you're treating the pizza like kodshim. But the last 5 clauses, which don't really have the oraisa tuma associations, implications, so gazubu rabbanon l'kodesh l'chulin shenaisu al tairis hakodesh l'gazubu rabbanon. So the rabbis made the gezerah with regard only to actual kodshim, to actual like shlomim meat, but l'chulin shenaisu al tairis hakodesh l'gazubu rabbanon. But they didn't make the gezerah by pizza. By pizza that is being treated as if it was with the same stringency of kodshim. Well, friends, that was the opinion of Rabbi Ila, that they are both talking about chatzitzas, right? That even that the first part of the first clause in the Mishnah talks about a vessel inside of a vessel is the concern is about making a chatzitza, a separation in the mikveh. Now, Rava Omer midesef avim mishum chatzitza reisha lav mishum chatzitza. So Rava says punkt fakert, says the opposite. That no, if the second part of if the later part of the Mishnah that talks about anat is a question about it, is a concern of chatzitza, so memele, the first clause in the Mishnah, which is the vessel inside of a vessel, is not a question of chatzitza. It's not like Rabbi Ila said. It's not a question of chatzitza. This is the reason with the vessel inside the vessel. Friends, you ready for this? Okie dokie. Well, the concern is, let's read that again. Gezerah out of a, how do you say gezerah? I don't know, a thing. Shelo yatbil machten v'tzinorius, that you shouldn't toivel needles and spinning forks. I think that's what it was. A note inside a vessel that the opening is smaller than a skin bottle's tube. Wow. Friends, you hear that? So basically, apparently there's this thing called a skin bottle's tube. So you would have like a bottle made out of skin, I guess, made out of hide, and then there would be an opening to it, and the opening would need to be at least the size of like this tube or whatever. So now the thing is, let's say you have, so you have to put something in the mikvah has to be 40 sa, right? Of course, yeah. Now, if you have a situation where you have a vessel, you have a what do we call it? A skin bottle. You have a skin bottle. And in the skin bottle, you put small objects like needles and spinning forks, which I guess are small objects. Now here's the thing. So you have the skin bottle, you put in, and then in the opening, you push through the opening small objects, and now they're inside of the skin bottle. And then you take the whole thing and you put it in the mikvah and everything gets wet, right? The bottle gets immersed. The needles and things that are inside the bottle get immersed. Fine. Now here's the thing. These needles and stuff that are inside the bottle, so Rava says, look, we're not concerned about chatzitza. That isn't the thing. Chatzitzas we know about later on from the knots. This isn't about chatzitzas. The issue over here is that these needles that are inside the bottle, so we need these needles to be submerged in 40 sa of water. Now that, in order, if the opening of the bottle is too narrow, well, what happens is we don't consider it anymore as if the needles are being submerged in 40 sa of water in the mikvah. Rather, the needles are being submerged inside of the water that's in this bottle. Kilu, if the opening of the bottle is too narrow, so then we consider the bottle as if it's like its own environment. It's like it's its own mikvah, so to speak, and it's a pasul mikvah because the bottle itself cannot contain enough water for it to be a kosher mikvah, cannot contain 40 sa of water. And therefore, Rav is concerned that if we allow you to put an object inside of another object, a vessel inside of another vessel, right? Rav says, look, there's no concern about chatzitza. The concern is that if we allow you to put one vessel inside of another vessel, you might end up putting needles and little spinning forks inside of a skin bottle that has an opening that's less than the size of this particular tube, and that would basically cut off, basically be closing off that area, and it would be considered as though those needles inside the skin bottle are in their own environment, i.e. not in the mikvah. And that would not work. And for that reason, we cannot allow vessels inside other vessels. Let's read that again. Rava says, look, we don't need to list chatzitza twice. If the first part of the Mishnah is concerned about chatzitzas, so then the second part of the Mishnah doesn't need to tell us about it. Or really vice versa. If the second part of the Mishnah is already telling us about it, then the first part of the Mishnah doesn't need to be telling us about it. So this is the reason why in the first part of the Mishnah, it says that you're not allowed to put a vessel inside of another vessel. Gezerah, because we're concerned that if we allow you to put vessels inside other vessels, you might put small needles and spinning forks inside of a skin bottle that the opening is smaller than a skin bottle's tube. Kidetnan, as we learn in the Mishnah, Eruv mikvos kishvaferis hanod, that in order to be able to join waters in a mikvah and have them all to be considered part of the mikvah, so you need that the opening to the other area be at least the size of a skin bottle's tube. Ke'ovya v'chalala, and that means it including the thickness of the tube itself and the space, the area, right, I don't know, if you think of a freaking tube, there's the actual like tube itself that has thing, and then there's like the space. Oh god. How can I describe a freaking tube? I don't know, have you seen like a straw before? Probably. You ever drink from a straw? You get like a milkshake or something, and you drink it out of a straw, like a straw, you know what I mean? Like for sipping straws. So I guess, like a straw kind of like has like a space. How do I describe a straw? It has like space. That's like where the milkshake goes through, like the space. But then like, there's also a thickness to like the straw itself, like whether it's plastic, the plastic has a thickness, or a friend of mine, Sam Schubert, he used to sell bamboo straws. So the bamboo has a thickness. So friends, how am I doing? Am I doing a good job describing a straw? Anyway, so it has to be as thick as the whole straw. The space where the milkshake goes through, and the thickness, whether it's bamboo or plastic. How did I do with my straw description? Let's go weiter. Alright, and like 2 fingers that you can get in there. Okay, fine. So what do you want me to tell you? So, where were we again? So what were we talking about? Rava and... Right, exactly. That he's concerned that maybe you'll put like needles and small objects in a vessel that's like doesn't have an opening that's the size of a skin bottle's tube, and it would be considered like we wouldn't be able to have a shaka, right? It would not be considered as though all the waters are connected and part of the waters of the mikvah. Rather, it would be as though this vessel that has the small opening is like its own area inside of it, and the needles and stuff are not actually in the mikvah. Oof. I hope I'm doing a good enough job explaining this. Anyways, so that is Rava's concern, that you might put these small things inside of this vessel and it would be a problem. So the Omar Reb Nachman and Rabbi Baravua, and Rava subscribes that which Reb Nachman says in the name of Rabbi Baravua, Yud Aleph Milos Shanu Kan, that if we look, unlike what we said according to Reb Ila a few minutes ago, according to Reb Nachman and Rabbi Baravua, there are 11 clauses in our Mishnah. Sheish Rishon is Bein the Kodesh, Bein the Chulin. The first 6 are both by Kodesh and by Chulin. Shenaisu al Taris HaKodesh. Achronos, whereas the last 5, the Kodesh, Avalo l'Chulin, Shenaisu al Taris HaKodesh, they're only for Kodesh, but not for Chulin, that was made with the holiness of Kodesh. And so we see that, right, so Rava subscribes to which Rav Nachman says in the name of Rabbi Baravua, that there are 11 clauses, i.e., all 11 things listed in the Mishnah are unique. Right. There's no doubles. Right. It's not like Rabbi Ila says that there are 2 clauses related to chatzitza. No, Rava says the first one has nothing to do with chatzitza. It has to do with this thing related to this skin bottles tube. Friends, that was Daf Chof Aleph of Masechta Hagiga. So we really just saw mostly the machlokas between Rabbi Ila and Rava about how to understand the first clause in the Mishnah, which is that by Kodesh we are concerned about putting a vessel inside of a vessel, which is not the case by Truman. The question is, what is the concern about a vessel inside of a vessel? Rabbi Ila says we're concerned that the inner vessel will weigh down upon the outer vessel and make a chatzitza. Rava says that is not the concern. Rather, we're concerned that if we allow you to put a vessel inside of another vessel, you might end up putting like small little needles and spinning forks and stuff inside of a vessel that the opening isn't large enough, and put all of it in the mikveh, and then it won't actually be considered like you are putting those needles and stuff in the mikveh, because the small opening of the vessel basically cuts off the inner part of the vessel where these needles are from the rest of the mikveh, and they would remain impure. Friends, well, that was Daf 21 of Masechta Hagiga. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.